Jai Shri Krishna. So today we are going to explore our human skeleton and specifically the radius bone present in the same. The radius bone is an amazing bone given to us by God, and this bone is supposed to be extensively studied as it's a wonderful bone from all different directions. So today I'm going to include some 3D imagery while talking about this bone. So here is the different perspectives of it with the skeleton and the different views that it gives us from different points. So I'm going to explain this comprehensively and completely in today's video. So let's see it. So here is the radius bone. The one that is highlighted over here is the radius bone. So I'm going to fade the others to be able to show this bone in special. So this bone is really a very important bone. It is connecting to the capitulum of the humerus that is seen above. The humerus is this particular bone over here. Yeah, this is the humerus. So while displaying others, we can see that the humerus is the one present atop the radius, and they both actually joining at this particular section. What you can see over here is the joining point, and this is where exactly they are joining. It's called the capitulum of the humerus and the circumference of the radius. This is called the humeroradial joint. So if we fade this bone away, we can also see certain other sections present in this bone. So let's display the others and just fade this bone away. So we can see the positions where this bone is touching the others. This bone is also uniting with the ulnar at the radio-ulnar joint up over here, this particular point, with the capitulum above its head, its circumference. And this bone is basically divided into three sections. Number one, it's the head section or the upper end. Number two, we have the shaft section or the middle area. And number three, we have the lower end. The upper end is divided again into three portions. The head, which I'm showing with the cursor over here, which is also called the circumference, a smooth area that can be seen clearly. In the same way, we can also see the neck. This is the neck area, neck region between the head, and the third region is the radial tuberosity. So between the head and the radial tuberosity is the neck area. The radial tuberosity is somewhat a irregular area, but though a very smooth area that is connecting the upper end to the shaft. And the neck is the portion that is connecting the head to the radial tuberosity. So we can see the shaft.
Can you show us where the radial tuberosity is?
This portion exactly is the radial tuberosity. So to show it from the anterior position, we can see this tuberosity area. You can see the it's actually standing out. This can only be shown with the 3D imagery. So it's very helpful to zoom into this. So you can zoom into this area. This area that I'm showing with the cursor, exactly speaking, is the radial tuberosity. And as you go down, you have the shaft. This is the shaft of the bone, and the sharp border that we see over here is called the radial or interosseous border. It's a very sharp border as seen here. This line that we can see over here is the interosseous border, and as we come down, this is the anterior position. We can refer the anterior position to the hip of this bone so that we can understand it more clearly. And the lower end connects to our hands. So this position over here, as we can see, this position over here, this position, the radius is, as with the ulna, connecting to the bones present at our upper end of the palm when we stand in the anatomical position. So I have made separate videos about the hand, which you can study about also, and that is a very important point in this video. And we have now shown the radius bone clearly from different points. So now we can see the ulna. It is blocking the radius, but I've also made it transparent so you can see through it and which angle of the radius is covered by the ulna. So while displaying others, the radius is covered by this area of the ulna. Yeah. So now we are going to study some other perspectives of the bone radius. And this is a map of the bone radius. This is the bone ulna. This is the bone radius. So the radius bone actually starts from its head, its circumference, and ends at its styloid process. This is the head and this is the neck. This is the radial tuberosity as explained over here. This is the shaft, and this is the anterior surface. This is the anterior border. This is the medial border, and this is the lateral surface. This border is called the medial border, the anterior border. It is actually having 3 borders: anterior, medial, and also a lateral border, but the lateral border is not that clearly visible as the other borders. So while seeing it from the anterior area, we can observe its 3 different borders. The anterior border is running in the center, whereas the medial border, which is the sharpest one, the interosseous border, is running over here. It is pointing towards the center of the body. That's why it's called the medial border. And in the same way, we have the different surfaces of this. The surfaces are areas that are bordered by the borders we explained now, and they are like the lateral surface, the anterior surface, etc., which can be studied through the map of the bone over here. So let's also study a few portions of the ulna, the bone ulna, to be able to understand the radius better, the portions that are connected to this particular study. So while talking about the ulna, we can choose the ulna separately and fade the others. So the ulna is joining inside with its olecranon process attached to the humerus, as seen over here. This section is to be studied very perfectly. The ulna is seen covering the radius.
Just above the ulna, there is a portion. Can you please explain what that is?
That is the humerus lower end. It is connecting to the ulna, and the humerus is actually touching the ulna over here. The ulna is seen clearly. The joint, the olecranon process, is seen clearly when we view it from the back side, the posterior side. But when we see it from the front, it is actually covered by the humerus. So it's fit to the posterior side of the humerus. So we can display the others now, which shows clearly the ulna bone with the olecranon process fit towards the other end. And in the same way, we can also see the portions where the ulna unites with the metacarpals of the hands, etc. So we can see these different bones also. This is the carpals. So these are the carpal bones, and scaphoid, etc. The scaphoid is uniting with the radius, whereas these other bones, these other carpals, are uniting the lunate, etc. Uniting the triquetrum, etc. are uniting with the ulna. So now, to be continuing with the radius, let's get back to the map. And this is called the styloid process of the radius. This area, especially this area, is called the styloid process of the radius. And this is the radius bone. So now we are going to continue explaining the different parts. So as we saw, 2 ends and a shaft. The upper end of radius has the head. Its head is disc shaped, as seen over here. If we see it from the anterior perspective, it's disc shaped, and from every single area, it's actually disc shaped. So if we see the total circumference of the top, so now I'm showing the bone from the top. The area which I'm showing over here with the cursor is basically the disc, the circumference. It's called the circumference because of its disc shaped conjunction with the humerus. This is the humerus. This particular bone is called the humerus. While displaying others, let me just show you the humerus and fade the others to make a clear observation of the humerus. The humerus is connecting here with the central portion of the body, and thereby starting the appendicular system of the left or right side, whichever area it is, and it is subsequently connecting with the radius that is under it, right under it. So we are displaying others now and hiding this particular bone. So now again, while we are turning this over here, we can identify the radius away from the ulna because of the ulna having its olecranon process at the back side, and the radius having its distinct disc shaped feature in the front or any direction. We can view its disc shaped feature. So this is the bone radius. Now we're going to also see a few different sections. So the hyaline cartilage is actually covering the disc head of this. So if I click the connection area over here, we can now understand which area is connected to what. Now this cartilage that is seen over here, just a minute. This cartilage that's seen over here, exactly. This cartilage is connecting to the head of the ulna. This cartilage is, the head of the radius, the circumference of the radius. It is also disc shaped except in one area where it touches the ulna. Now this green color area is connecting to the humerus and is binding the radius towards the humerus. It's called the hyaline cartilage. So it is clear. It's a ligament. There's a ligament also, and there's a cartilage also over there. This is the capitulum of the humerus that is connecting to it. This is the humero-radial part of the elbow joint. Now, the elbow joint is actually comprising of various portions, whereas we are talking about the humero-radial portion, especially in this connection. So the radial notch of ulna is present over here. So to show the radial notch of ulna, I'm going to just show the, Can you please show this, Abhigya? Can you please show this? Yeah. Now we are only seeing the radius bone, and now I'm going to show the radial tuberosity. The radial notch of ulna. Now ulna has a point over here which can be studied as the radial notch of the ulna. Now this triangular portion that you can see over here is the area where the radius connects to the ulna, and it's called the radial notch of the ulna. So while studying the bones, it's very helpful to have 3D imagery so that we can understand each and every portion of the bone clearly. And now for a summary of the head connections, the circumference connections, the circumferential connections of the bone radius. Number one, it's with the humero-radial joint, the capitulum of humerus forming the humero-radial joint. Number two, it is forming the radio-ulnar joint by connecting with the radial notch of the ulna, and it is actually communicating with all of this through a ligament over there, which I just showed now. While showing the connection areas, we can see this ligament that is connecting to the ulna to be able to connect with the whole humerus bone and the ulnar bone. Now I am switching off the connections and showing the rest again. The rest of the circumference is covered by the annular ligament. Only one area is covered by the hyaline cartilage, whereas the rest of it is covered by the annular ligament. That's the annular ligament, and the hyaline cartilage is just behind it. And the neck is the constricted part below head. It's the constricted part. It's actually, while I say constricted, I mean the radius is having its circumference at the top, and then the radial tuberosity in the end. So the upper end is actually having two bulged portions, whereas the center of it is called the it's called the neck area. Abhigya, can you please come near and stop fidgeting with it? So this is free from any capsular attachment, allowing it to move freely along with the head within the ligament. So the neck is allowing so the neck moves freely without any actually attachment or constriction, though it is between the two. So now we're going to understand the radial tuberosity, situated just below the medial part of the neck. Now while showing the radial tuberosity, Just to understand the radial tuberosity, we can get close to this area, and this area is basically clear. Yeah. So the video got cut, and we can continue. So we have understood the neck, the radial tuberosity, and the shaft of the radius with its 3 surfaces and 3 borders. The 3 borders are the anterior border, the interosseous border, and the posterior border. The anterior border is actually starting from the anterolateral part of the radial tuberosity. The radial tuberosity, as shown here, is this area. It starts from here and it ends and actually runs from there till the end, and it actually runs till the styloid process of the radius, which is at the down portion over here. So it starts from here and comes down till here. So in the same way, now I shall explain the oblique upper half. So it's basically indistinct in the middle. It's vertical in the lower half and prominent and sharp towards the lower end, towards the styloid process. And next thing is the medial or interosseous border. It's the sharpest of all the borders. It's actually seen very clearly. This line, this very sharp line, is the interosseous border. Means it's actually medial towards the body. And the posterior border is the third border. It's quite oblique in the middle, and vertically it goes downwards to the dorsal tubercle, Lister's tubercle, and there are various foramens that go through this area. And now we are going to explore the 3 surfaces of the shaft of the radius. They are the anterior surface, the medial surface, the posterior surface. Between these areas, or the anterior surface, the posterior surface, and the lateral surface. So these so the anterior surface is a thick prominent ridge. The radial artery is palpated against it over here. So when we keep our hands here in the Nadi Vijnana, we are able to understand the different beats of the body inside, and that radial artery, that is the main artery to understand the Nadi in Ayurveda, is palpated against that area. So the radial artery is on the anterior surface of the lower end of the radius. The posterior surface is actually the prominent tubercle. The Lister's tubercle is in the midline. So the posterior surface of the lower end of radius, the posterior end of the lower end of radius, the posterior surface is this Lister's tubercle that is seen over here. It's a very small tubercle that can only be seen zooming through it. So this is the area. It's a really small tubercle within this spot, but it's quite prominent. So it's called the Lister's tubercle. And next we are also going to see next we're going to see the medial surface. The medial surface is a smooth articular surface. It touches the ulnar notch over here, this area, and it articulates with the head of the ulna, and it forms the inferior radio-ulnar joint through that. So the head of the ulna is at this portion, and the inferior radio-ulnar joint occurs over there. And the ridge is the ridge in the lowest margin, separating it from the interior surface. That's how it is present. And the inferior surface is a lateral triangular area for articulation with the scaphoid, and medial quadrangular area for articulation with the lunate. So we have a triangular area over here that is articulating with the scaphoid, and a quadrangular area that's articulating with the lunate. So for an explanation of this, we can see the triangular area inside over here. It's actually touching this area. So I'm fading the others to show this connection in this area. And in the same way, we have the now we are seeing just the lunate and the connection to the lunate in a quadrangular area. So we have understood the triangular and the quadrangular area connections of the scaphoid and the bone lunate. So now this is the entire look of the bone. For example, there's a head, and as you go down, you have the Lister's tubercle over here, the dorsal tubercle. There's a posterior surface of it. So I'm showing the bone from the back side. The same thing you can see in this map from the back side. It looks like this. So this is the Lister. Yeah, so this is a Lister's tubercle in this small area that we can see over here. And when a person falls on their hands like this, especially an old person with osteopenia, low density of bones, or osteoporosis or something, if an old person, especially ladies who are more susceptible to this problem, if they fall on the forearm with the forearm as the support and they press it to protect the rest of their body, they generally have a radial fracture. And this is actually called the collis fracture, and it is 1 inch proximal to the wrist joint. It generally happens over here. It's proximal to the wrist joint. The wrist joint, near to the body, proximal to the body, in the wrist joint, 1 inch. So this fracture is mainly due to having weak bones, osteoporosis or osteopenia, etc. It's good to guard against such diseases by consuming good materials. So I shall make a different video on osteoporosis, etc. But for now, we have completely covered the radius bone to a large extent. So thank you. Jai Shri Ramachandra, Jai Shri Krishna, Jai Shri Lakshmi Nrsimha.